Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the first video I'm putting up in 2 weeks. The reason for that is because my phone broke, and my phone is the thing that I've been using to film on and upload and edit on, and it had everything. And the screen wasn't working, so I had to send it back, and they tried to fix it. Instead, they just sent me a new phone. And I hadn't backed up any of the videos. And so I have to refilm them. I'm really upset about it because, well, the only reason I'm really upset is because of this video. This video is one that I'm using for school. And so I can't just not do it. And this video, I put like 50 hours of work in prior to filming it the first time. And it hurt my brain a lot, but whatever. And this video ended up being 45 minutes long. And now I have to refilm it. Okay, but it's fine. I'm gonna just do it. But before we get into the whole discussion of this video, I would like to let you guys know that I was going to put up a November TBR, but I'm not now because we're halfway through the November. I scrapped my TBR back like on the 10th and just left it at that. I'll put a December TBR up when December comes, but for November, just pretend that I did one. It doesn't matter. I got other videos I want to put up, including this one. So I'm just gonna get into it. The video today is a discussion on the book and TV show the book and TV show of 13 Reasons Why is about a girl who dies of suicide 2 weeks prior to the beginning of the book. And the whole story is from Clay Jensen's perspective when he gets these tapes in the mail. And he starts them, and they're from Hannah Baker, which is the girl who died. And it is all of the reasons why she killed herself. There's 13 of them. And she's sending the tapes to each person. That is one of the reasons why she killed herself. So the whole story is Clay listening to these tapes and coming to terms with the fact that he's on them. And he's one of the reasons why she killed herself. I don't like this book, okay? For 2017 booktubeathon, and I didn't like it then either. The whole story came off as like kind of like a thing of Hannah Baker was just trying to get revenge on these people who made her kill herself, when really you have a choice when it comes to suicide, okay? You can either kill yourself or you cannot. And yeah, you can blame people, but ultimately it's your own. You're the one who did it to yourself. Okay? And I understand like people go through hard things and like depression and stuff, but it's like she's giving them power even. She's giving these people who hurt her the power to take her own life. So anyways, those were my initial thoughts on the book. I just didn't like the whole revenge feel that it had, and I looked into a little bit of other things also that I just wasn't a fan of. There's the origins and the inspiration of where 13 Reasons Why came from, I think is just a bit sick and sketchy. I don't like it. And I'm not going to get into that, but it's like, if you have a copy of the book, it's in the back of the book in the question and answers thing. So you can go look at it yourself. But, so yeah, just that she takes like 2 weeks to record these tapes that she ends up sending out after she decides she's going to kill herself. It's just kind of a bitter monologue of just, I mean, it's not healthy to decide you're going to kill yourself and then for weeks delay that because you want to mount the bitter up in yourself so that you can hurt these people. So yeah. Another reason why I don't like this book or show is because the moral of the story is kind of treat people nicely, because you never know what they're going through. Hannah Baker, the things that she goes through are not bad by them, are not, they're not like, oh, they are bad, but they're not too devastating as isolated incidences. And she even says this, they're not, most of them aren't devastating, but them mounted up on top of each other is. So she even addresses this idea that it's like, it's none of you were aware or took the time or even had the compassion to maybe consider what I was going through when you did these things to me. And so, yeah. But the problem I have with that is that Hannah Baker does this herself. She doesn't know why these people did what they did to her, okay? She kind of understood it. She had a bit of her own commentary to what they did and why she thinks they did it, but she doesn't really know. And then she goes out and sends these tapes to them to make sure they know that it's their fault. Without even considering their own life. The show kind of even addresses this, that Alex tries to kill himself at the end of the show because he's so distraught about being on the tapes and that he killed Hannah. That's what he thinks. He killed Hannah. And that's another thing that makes me really angry about this thing. Yeah, okay. We're gonna get into some actual like facts and stuff in a little bit, but I want to tell you like my first impression of the book. And I had a few. So, yeah. So so then I decided that I wanted to do this video once I made this channel, a video about 13 reasons why, because it's been stuck in my head since I read it. And so I didn't want to read the book again, so I just watched the show, which was so long. Oh my gosh. Why did it need to be that long? I don't know. It was 13 hours, just so you know. 13 hours long. Anyways. So I watched the show as a refresher. And then I did some research on suicide in media, and mental illness. And yeah. So when I was looking this stuff up, I found the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I have notes down here, so I'm looking at them to remember. And there are 3 things I'm going to mention that... 3? Is it 3? Yes, no, it's 2. Okay, it's only 2. 2 things I'm going to talk about that they talked about on the site. One of the things they mentioned on this site was resilience in schools specifically. It said that they think schools should be teaching resilience, and media should also be doing the same thing, since it's one of the big factors in a high schooler's life, something that they absorb like every day, is media and YouTube and shows, and I wouldn't say books, because I know that people don't usually like books, but books included. Resilience needs to be taught in these things and shown as something that can be obtained, even though you're going through like a confusing time in your life where you're growing as a person. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention wanted to make sure that schools and media were showing the theme that coming back from a hard situation you can come back from it, and that there are ways to, and they wanted to provide treatment and support to come back from these things, like abuse, depression, neglect, bullying, a whole bunch of other things, just anything really that's kind of holds you back and can make you feel like you're like life's not going to go on or something. So 13 Reasons Why does not do this. It does pretty much the exact opposite. Hannah Baker obviously dies of suicide. So it didn't teach any message of coming back and bouncing back and having resilience. It had this foreboding feel, like in the show. In the flashbacks, I had this foreboding feel if you know Hannah's gonna die, and it's inevitable because you already know she's gonna die. It just gives this idea that it's irreversible, and there's no other choice that you have, which is not true and should not be the message that we are encouraging, which is why I can't understand why so many people like this show. So anyways, that's just a little thing about resilience that I really wanted to talk about, that there are reasons why it doesn't. The other thing that I want to talk about from this site, which is my big, huge argument, I guess, is suicide contagion and suicide in the media. Okay, so I'm going to read this definition of suicide contagion to you so you know exactly what it is. Suicide contagion is the exposure to suicide or suicidal behaviors within one's family, one's peer group, or through media reports of suicide, and can result in an increase in suicide and suicidal behaviors. Direct and indirect exposure to suicidal behavior has been shown to precede an increase in suicidal behavior in persons at risk for suicide, especially in adolescents and young adults. So, okay, media has a responsibility to report or to talk about suicide in the correct way. I understand that media is more of stuff like reporting and journalism. It's not exactly Netflix shows, but I think that we can overlap the two for the context of this video, just because the point of journalism is the point of the news reporting and stuff is to spark conversation for an issue that some people and some sides have, and not every single book does this. Some books are just meant for entertainment reasons, which is great, but other books like 13 Reasons Why is meant to spark conversation. So I think that we can overlap the two for the context of this video. So I wanted to show you these 10 guidelines that American Foundation for Suicide Prevention came up with for when you talk about suicide in media. So I'm going to read them, talk about them. Some of them I don't really have much to say on. The first one is, do not ever say that someone committed suicide. That's like, that kind of gives the idea that suicide is a crime. It's not a crime. It hasn't been a crime for a while. I don't remember the year, but I know there was like a year that it, yeah. So neither the book and the TV show, neither of them do it. I don't think they ever say that Hannah Baker committed suicide. So that's okay. Second guideline is you have to provide helpline info, which both of them do. And in the book, there's a number to call and a website to go look at. So there's that. The TV show on Netflix does have a helpline. It does have helpline info. I actually went and looked at it, and I kind of have problems with the site because the resource they use to give people a place for the help, to give people a place to go get help, it's not actually a place to go get help. It's a place that lists other resources to go get help. And then it promotes the show if you scroll down a bit more. And I think there's some problems with that, but I'm not going to get into it. And there's a lot of things that I have problems with in like every single little corner of this discussion. But I'm only saying the really big ones because otherwise this video would be like 5 hours long and not make much sense most likely. But the show does give helpline. So both of them meet the standards on that one. The third guideline is, do not include details or images of lethal means of methods used, which can be triggering for those who are struggling and has shown to cause contagion. The book actually does a fine job with this. It just says Hannah took some pills, and that was it. The show, though, I don't think they even saw this guideline because there are two significant points that have graphic images of Hannah. And that's it, aside from her suicide. So really it has 3. There's 2 points where you see Hannah and some stuff. I'm not going to explain it because I'm trying to follow these guidelines in this video myself. But the show does do this. It shows graphic depictions of her suicide and other images aside from that. Okay, just threw the guideline out the window, didn't even pay attention to it. They're like, let's pick out some random ones here, some random guidelines, and we'll follow a few, and then there's big ones. Those look too hard. I don't like it. Okay. 4th guideline is, do not refer to suicide as a growing problem. Neither of them do, so there's that. The 5th guideline is, exclude graphic depictions of a suicide, death, or glamorizing method used. Avoid details about the location of death and sharing notes left behind. Okay, so first of all, this guideline, I have another thing to say about showing Hannah Baker's suicide, and then I'll get to the big glaring issue with this last thing. But, so about them showing Hannah Baker's suicide on the show, and then, I don't think I said this, but they changed the suicide. She ended up cutting herself. And they showed this scene, they showed where she did it, and everything, okay? So that, again, completely ignores this guideline. But my other point with this, that they don't follow this guideline, is in Beyond the Reasons, it talks about why they decided to change the suicide. And the producer, I don't remember what his name was, but he said, the reason we changed the suicide was to make it as unappealing and uncomfortable as possible, the thought of killing yourself. And it angered me so much, because apparently the thought of killing yourself, just in it of itself, is not uncomfortable and unappealing enough for Hollywood. Okay? They had to glamorize it. Do not use any glamorizing methods. Okay. Oh my god. So they ranked and rated the death of how you can kill yourself. And, oh, these ones down here, they're just not quite good enough, okay? You have to be up here if you want to be noticed by Hollywood and talked about in Hollywood. This stuff down here it doesn't matter at all. You know, that's sad that you killed yourself, but we want to talk about the really hard stuff, you know? This is really uncomfortable. And yes, it was uncomfortable to watch, but the whole idea of someone reaching the point of self-hatred or depression, just such a crippling point where you kill yourself, apparently that is not uncomfortable enough for people. Okay, maybe they were trying to make it uncomfortable for the people at risk of suicide, which I'll talk about later. I don't think anyone at risk of suicide should watch this show or read the book in the first place, okay? So, there's that, but more on that later. Another thing with this guideline is do not show any notes left behind, which the entire plot, there's no even way you could write the book or watch the show in any sort of the same way possible if you actually follow this guideline. The whole idea of it is that it's a suicide note. And you're just listening to it the entire time or reading it. I have nothing else to say about it. Just that was ignored, you know. Okay. The sixth guideline is suicides do not classify suicide as this was a failed attempt or this suicide was successful, which neither of them do. The show and the book. I don't remember either of them doing that. So, seventh guideline is this: do not portray suicide as being caused by a single event. I'm going to say that they did not do this. They did not follow this guideline because there are a whole bunch of different things that happened to her, and it obviously it's called 13 Reasons Why. It attributes her death to a bunch of different reasons, but it all comes down to bullying. So, but maybe it does. Maybe what they mean is not one single event that happened at one time. Don't attribute it to that. So I don't actually know. You could make the argument that they didn't follow this guideline. You could make the argument that they did. Yeah. It's kind of unclear. So I'll just go to the eighth guideline, which is convey that suicidal thoughts can be helped and reduced with proper mental health support and treatment, which neither of them do. The school counselor in the book and the movie, or TV show, was not helpful, which I understand that not every counselor is necessarily a good counselor. And I understand that a lot of people my age, and myself included, have a hard time going to people and trusting the people that they probably should trust with their issues. I completely understand that. But it didn't offer any idea that there was support that could have been given. It wrote her parents off as people who obviously loved their daughter. They loved their daughter, but they didn't really pay attention to her needs. I think her parents were kind of neglectful. But also, the school counselor, the show kind of, and the book, kind of shuts off all roads of someone who is considering suicide. And like, kind of feels like they need to talk about it, and they want to try and talk about it, and then they watch this show, which I don't think you should. And it's kind of like, oh, they're not going to help me. They're not going to help me if I go. They're not going to understand. They're going to just, I don't even know how to describe it. Yes, the characters were horrible. They should have handled it better. And there are real life people who actually make the same mistakes that those people do. But you shouldn't be spreading that message, because there are people out there who will help you. And yeah, so that's another guideline they don't follow. Okay, number 9 is use up-to-date suicide data. I don't think any of the show and the book, I don't think they showed any suicide data. So, it's okay. Obviously followed that guideline. The 10th guideline is to share the hopeful message that suicide is preventable, which I've said a couple times, given a few different examples why I think that the show does not convey this idea. The entire time you know Hannah's death is going to happen because she's already dead. It's inevitable, just because of the way that the plot is constructed. The characters say explicitly a couple times that there's no way her death could have been prevented. It could have been, and it can be prevented by these other people it could have been prevented by these other people coming in and being kind to her and showing her love, but it also could have been prevented by Hannah reaching out and trying to get help. It shouldn't be all on one person to depend upon themselves to fix themselves if they are having suicidal thoughts. But it is upon them to go and get help. And Hannah goes to the school counselor at the end. It's like he's the 13th reason why. She goes to him to get help. And he wasn't super helpful, but she also kind of shut him down after a while, and she wasn't very open. There are ways that she could have reacted to it better. And after that, she shouldn't have stopped there. She should have continued going to get help. She could have, and she made the choice not to anymore. And I understand that there are people who do make that choice. But to spread the message that overall it's just how it goes, that's not okay. Yeah, okay. I tried to say that 3 different times. That is the first time it actually ever came out correctly and coherently. Okay, next thing. So those were all the guidelines in the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And that's my big case. The show just doesn't follow these guidelines. My guess is they didn't even look them up. They didn't even research really what they should and shouldn't put in a show that discusses suicide, or a book that discusses suicide. But now I want to talk about who the show and the book are meant for. So the first thing you might think of is that this show is for the people at risk of suicide. And I'm gonna just read what I wrote, because most of it was a keyword outline of just enough for me to remember what I was thinking so that I could say it. But this I actually wrote down word for word, and I took the time to think about what I was writing, and I kind of liked it, so I'm just gonna say it. Okay, who's the audience? Is it people at risk of suicide? This is what I said to that question. All of the guidelines above have been constructed with the thought of what is and what's not going to cause suicide contagion. People who already have suicidal thoughts are more at risk to the things in these guidelines, and since the show and the book don't follow these, the audience cannot and should not be the people at risk of suicide. Basically, I was just saying that these guidelines clearly state it's not healthy for people at risk of suicide to watch the show or read the book. So this cannot be the audience. So then who is the audience? Is it for the people who need to think about what they're saying and what they're doing and how it might affect other people? My thought of that is, yeah, we should, bullies, we should, or mean people, not just bullies, because you can be rude and mean without being a bully. Just anyone who has a tendency to be mean, which I have a tendency to be mean, honestly. I'm kind of a rude person sometimes, and I have to think about what I say and what I'm going to do before I say and do it. And that thought and idea did not come to me, though, that I needed to think about these things first from 13 Reasons Why. It came long before from other just conversations I had with people, thoughts I had from watching movies and TV shows, and thoughts I had from books I read. There are so many other ways to discuss, hey, maybe you should be a little bit nicer, than reading a book about that is so violent, unhealthy, and just it's an uneducated book, not an uneducated book. It's uneducated people writing books and shows. Anyways, I don't know if that sentence made sense. But there are other things that people can be reading or watching or talking about. Just go talk to someone. I'm sure someone in your life is telling you that you're a rude person. Anyways, that kind of derailed. So, okay. Third thing that I wanted to mention with the who is the audience for this story is, and this is where I really think that the show and the book are at fault. It doesn't matter talking about who should watch this, because the producers and the directors and the actors and everybody involved in the show and the author, Jay Asher himself, all talk about that they want people at risk of suicide watching this and reading this, and that it's good for them, when clearly it's not if you do just a little bit of research. You guys, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, I found in 5 minutes. And there are other sites like that one to find. After entering the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention site, I found the guidelines in 5 minutes. Okay, it took 10 minutes for me to construct the biggest argument of why they should not have done this story in the first place. Okay. And why they shouldn't have taken the approach that they did. So the fact that these creators are not even putting the time and effort to figure out how they should properly do this. 10 minutes, you guys. It took me 10 minutes. Angers me so much, and it shows a lack of ignorance, or not lack of ignorance, a lack of discipline, and a lack of compassion, and a disrespect for this topic, and for the people who are going through this and who have suicidal thoughts. Oh my gosh, I need to take a minute. Clearly, going into this story, none of these creators had the integrity, discipline, or just care to do research on how they should handle this heavy topic. That's what I wrote down. And that's what I'm leaving it at. Because otherwise I will get angry. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and they did this the wrong way. Okay. Next thing that I want to talk about is Beyond the Reasons. It's it's where I got all of the producers, directors, and all their opinions on this show, and like how I know that they said that it should be for people at risk of suicide, because they said it in Beyond the Reasons. I haven't seen season 2's discussion, but pretty much they had a discussion about season 1 and all the issues that it covered in it. So anyways, that took a while to explain, much longer than it needed to. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because they talked about some issues in the thing, and the issues that 13 Reasons Why brings up. And I just wanted to talk about it. You'll see why, okay? So the video was 30 minutes long, and it talked about suicide, treatment, slut-shaming, bullying, cyberbullying, being vulnerable, sexual assault, emotional education, and the bro code. And then like it talked about some other things in smaller like these things in smaller ideas, kind of dissected it down. Is that some, I don't know. So yeah, okay. I feel that this video shows a lack of ignorance on this topic by them, because they left out something really, really important in Beyond the Reasons that they should have talked about. And it could have been talked about in the book and or the show also, but they didn't talk about it in there, okay? And that is mental illness. 9 out of 10 people who die of suicide have a diagnosable mental illness. So, suicide and mental illness are inevitably linked. Not inevitably. I mean, there's 1 out of 10 who don't have a mental illness. But either way, because it's such a big factor in someone who might kill themselves, that maybe you have you may have a mental illness, it should be talked about. And again, this was one of the things, it was one of the first things that showed up in the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention site, that 9 out of 10 people who die of suicide have a mental illness, or it's not that hard to find. Mental illness is something that I'm really interested in. So that was something that I really wanted to have discussed when I read 13 Reasons Why, and then it wasn't. And it wasn't discussed in the show. And I thought maybe they'll discuss it in Beyond the Reasons. Like they're going to say Hannah Baker did have depression, but she didn't know it or something. They didn't even say that. The only thing said about mental illness was by Selena Gomez. She made It was less than a minute long because she just made a passing comment about it. And that was it. So beyond my own personal disappointment that they didn't talk about it, it just is another example of them not researching this subject, which, when you have a subject that's so heavy and dark and uncomfortable and so serious, you need to research it. It is plainly just the right thing to do, just the human thing to do. Maybe people aren't so annoyed as I am that they didn't research this. I am annoyed, I am angry, I am upset, I am frustrated, I am offended, I am scared that they didn't research this. And then they went and, oh my gosh, 13 hours. Oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to be done now. Those were all of my points. There were so many other things that bothered me, that do bother me with 13 Reasons Why, like where the inspiration of it, Hollywood's hand in the show, the audience bothers me. But I'm not going to talk about it because, as I said earlier, it would make this video 5 hours long. And I worked myself so much talking about this again. But I'm going to go edit this video now and put it up. Although obviously now it's already up, so not you guys. You guys will probably just click out of this video and go watch something else. Okay, so I'll just say bye now. Goodbye.